Are you used to following a diet or not following a diet in order to improve your health? If so, you may be in a trap of behavior modification. Now, I don't necessarily think following a specific way of eating is a negative. I don't think that that is something that we shouldn't do at times. But if you leave it to just that and you don't change the way you think, that diet will be very unlikely to stick. What am I talking about? Well, on my main channel on Fire Fit, I talked about our thoughts. And I do think that we tend to try to change our lives based off of behavior. But I think that if we really pay attention to what we're thinking and what we are allowing ourselves to kind of play on a repeat in our mind, that is really what's going to either make or break an eating plan, a fitness plan, whatever. They work really well together in harmony, but behavior modification all by itself is not a good plan. So, following a diet, it might work for a little while, but if you are butting heads with thoughts in your head that don't coincide with wellness, you are unlikely to stick with that. So, one of the things that I think is really important is to analyze what we say to ourselves, even if we're not paying attention. I think one of the reasons we don't do that is because it takes a little more work, and it can also be a little troubling at times if those thoughts are not very positive. But if you really want to unlock the potential you have for wellness, I believe that we have to take all of our thoughts captive to Christ to analyze them. I'm going to make this very applicable to wellness because on my main channel, I talked about the same topic, but I made it very broad. But I wanted to bring it into more specific in this place because people on this platform right now are more than likely trying to move toward wellness. I really believe that our thoughts are foundational to wellness. So, for example, if you tend to not even realize it, but you say to yourself, I've always been overweight, food is my comfort, I just have a sweet tooth, I just don't feel motivated to exercise. If you notice that your thoughts say things in that realm frequently or some variation of that, you are going to fulfill that prophecy in your own life. When you start to recognize that that is not really true, you do not naturally have a sweet tooth. You do not naturally have a sloth like, what's the word, existence. You don't naturally have to be overweight or unhealthy. That is not who God made you to be, designed you to be. But if you continue to tell yourself that or think that way, no matter what you do with trying to change your diet or your exercise, it's not going to stick. One of those reasons that it won't stick is that your mind goes about looking for basically harmony between what you do and what you're thinking. So even if you're doing things that you think those things are healthy, I'm going to just try to stay motivated, but your mind is saying something totally different, they're going to butt heads all the time. And so you have to change the way that you talk and think that lines up with this. So, probably the thing that holds a lot of people back is it doesn't feel true to them to say things that don't quote unquote feel true. So maybe you do really enjoy sweets. So maybe it is true that you have a weakness for that. But you can also look at it from a different standpoint. And you can say, yeah, I enjoy sweets, but I don't enjoy what they're doing to my body. I don't enjoy the long term effect of them on my body. I don't enjoy the diabetes I'm getting. I don't enjoy the medication that I have to take to counteract those sweets. If you can start to look at that phrasing that you're using and start to change the way that you think, ask God, do I really have a sweet tooth? Is this really something that I can't overcome? It's just built in, a tooth that is sweet. I already know. But no, that is not who I am. Yes, that is something that my thoughts have gotten wrapped up in. It doesn't mean that it has to always be that way. So when I look at scenarios of food or exercise or whatever, I've used this example before, but when I had had my belly surgeries, I literally could not walk. It was very difficult even to get from the bed to the bathroom. And for many months, I was on the couch and I could just get around the house for those months. And they say that surgery is harder to recover from than open heart surgery because it's your whole core, it's your whole foundation that has been completely obliterated. And when I did get to the point where I was healed enough that I could go take a walk around the block, I was like, so many people don't want to take a walk. This is the most glorious thing ever that I am able to walk around the block. I never want to take this for granted. The mindset of I have to go exercise versus I get to go exercise is such a mind shift when you look forward to it because you have a body that is capable. You have a body that can move. It changes everything. And even if you don't have a body that can move like that, I've told this story before. I had a patient, he was a quadriplegic, could not move arms, could not move legs. This happened from an accident. He had come into the clinic that I work at in a wheelchair. And I was talking to him because he came in for his blood pressure. And I was talking to him about his lifestyle. And he was telling me how he goes to swim in the pool every day. And I think it was at the Y. And I said, how do you manage to do that? He said, well, they have, a chairlift. They lower me into the water and I can move about in the water. And he was so full of joy for the ability to move his body in the water, even though he was a quadriplegic. His perspective on life was mind blowing because where most of us would have gotten into a pity party trap, he was looking at the beautiful way that he could still move his body in the water. How many times do we get caught in these traps of thinking, this is just how I am? There's no hope. I'm never going to get out of this. I've never been able to before, or nothing ever lasts, or whatever. Do you know the reason it doesn't last? It's because of how you're thinking. It's not because you had the wrong diet plan. Well, it could have been. Some diets are just trash, but it's about the way you're thinking. So we need to start to shift our mindset. I did this with alcohol. You can watch that video, it's on my main channel. I didn't have a quote unquote problem with alcohol. Maybe I did. The fact that I would even think of giving it up, some people would say that means you have a problem. I noticed that it was not serving me. I didn't always sleep the best. I thought maybe it was making my sleep not as good for my jaw. Um, they always talked about heart health with red wine. It's not really true. Alcohol is just a toxin. And I started to notice that I would get tired before I wanted to. Sometimes interpersonal relationships didn't go quite as well because I would get more emotional, whatever. Sometimes it was fine. A lot of times it was fine. So that's why you get caught in that trap. But when I started to look at the truth, I'm like, is alcohol really a necessary component to relax, to be social, to have fun, whatever it is that we say? Yes, it does cause you to feel relaxed for a short period of time. That is true. Does it make you feel more social? It might. Yes, it could. And sometimes it does for a short time. Everything about it was true for a short time. And I would say that's true of things like sugar, junk food, fast food, foods that are not really, we know they're not really building our body in a healthy way. Yes, the truth is they do taste good. They do feel good in the moment. But the truth also is that it doesn't last. It doesn't really meet our need. It doesn't really make us feel better in the long run. Can you have those things from time to time? Sure. Maybe you decide to give some things up for good. Maybe some things do get built into your life. But it's your thoughts around those things that I think have the biggest impact. Because if you think, I just have to have this pastry, I just have to have this Starbucks loaded with sugar, blah, blah, blah. I just have to. Listen to your thoughts. Is that true? Do you really have to have that? And no, you don't. And as much as it seems like it, because the urge inside of you is so strong, you really need to think about that wording you're using. If you say, I'm just old, and so I can't, move like I used to move. I have seen so many stories of people who were never real fitness related, junkies or anything like that. And in their 70s decided to become bodybuilders. And they look amazing and they're strong and they're upright and they're moving and feeling good and more active and more alive than they've ever been. Stop saying things that are not true. Say the things that God says about you. This really boils back down to our identity, who we are, who we remind ourselves, reinstate, renew in our minds about what God says about us. As we get older, of course, there are going to be some limitations that naturally happen with the human body. I'm not saying just throw all caution to the wind and be reckless. I'm saying stop telling yourselves things that are not true and start changing the way you think. If it coincides with a healthy eating plan, all the better. Now that eating plan, that behavior, that diet, whatever you want to call it, is going to help reinforce the identity of who you are. But don't leave it up to the diet to save you or to change your life. This is not something that is going to happen long term until we clean up the way we talk to ourselves, the thoughts that we're having. And we're all working on that, I'm not above anybody. I think we all have to pay attention to what we say to ourselves, about other people, about food, about alcohol, about whatever. Change the way that you think, change the way you feel, changes the way you live. So I hope that you will give that some thought. What is your struggle with? And what do you say to yourself about that? Come up with a new phrase. Rejoice always, pray continually, give thanks in everything. And in this, we get to say, God, thank you so much that you just shone a light on this thought pattern. Help me to take it captive. Help me to make it obedient to you, because I know it's going to be better for me. It's going to improve my relationship with you because I'm not going to have that clutter in there. It'll probably spill out onto other people, because the more that you feel good about yourself, the more that you speak to yourself in a positive, healthy way, the more that that's going to flow out to other people. So I hope that you take that away. Thanks for being here. Live that on fire life.